sacred. And we can look at all this, though, and for a lot of us, I mean, up until I became a pastor 24, 25 years ago, none of these 5 did I ever really deal with. I didn't have to deal with any of them growing up. I didn't think about it. I'm sure my dad did with some, but in the last 25 years, I have dealt with all of these, with people's lives, and lives that have been shattered, and lives that are hurt, but also lives that are reborn and restored and walk closer to the Lord. So if you walked with any of these, no, I'm not up here this morning to bring judgment on anybody, not at all, but to offer grace, because you see, this commandment is not simply about thou shalt not kill or murder, premeditate our physical body. It even goes deeper than that. It goes deeper. It gets to the spirit of the law. Jesus says in Matthew 5, you have heard it said that the people long ago said, you shall not murder. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But Jesus says, but I say to you, anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to the brother or sister, Raka, is answerable. Raka simply means, you empty-headed person, you dumb person. It's like, duh, you are so stupid. Jesus says that within the Jewish time, if you said Raka, you empty-headed person, you were then answerable to the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders of that day. But anyone who says you fool will be in the dangers of the fire of hell. Jesus here takes the whole commandment of you shall not murder, you shall not premeditate a murder, and creates it into a deeper, moves it into a deeper aspect, moves it into the aspect of the Hebrew term for the word rasha, which is simply to bruise, to crush, or to shatter. For me to murder somebody doesn't mean that I actually have to take their life. I can do it with my words. I can do it with what I have to say. Which sort of gets us into like 2 weeks from now when we're going to talk about you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. When we bear false witness against our neighbor, when we gossip about our neighbors, what are we doing? We're killing their spirits. We're shattering who they are. And we may not think it doesn't take it's not just a once time, but it may take a long time for that spirit to be shattered. When I was living in South Dakota, when we moved out there in '88, we had a brand new house. Had a sliding door, a glass sliding door in the living room, family room area in the house. And you got to know, South Dakota winters, they get cold. You know, people here say, oh man, it's 5 degrees, we're freezing. I chuckle because out there, 25 degrees is nothing. After about 7 or 8 years of living out there, the kids and I were watching TV one day, and all of a sudden we heard this crack. Now, what is that crack? And before we knew it, we heard a loud pop, and that sliding glass door shattered into thousands of pieces. Nothing hit it. What we were told is that just over the time and with the cold, there was a flaw in the glass door, and a flaw with the gas in between, and with the cold and the heat, and it just shattered. It was gone. You shall not commit murder. Just not the physical murder within our life. But we can, over time, kill somebody's spirit with the words that we say, or maybe the words that we don't say. Meaning those loving words, those kind words, those words of grace, those words of mercy, those words that come from the attributes of who we are and who we have been created in the image of. Do you see how all of these fit together? I mean, if you don't, I'm not doing a good enough job with this whole teaching on the Ten Commandments. That all of these Ten Commandments flow and they ebb and they weave together like a beautiful tapestry. You shall not murder. Whether it's the physical, you shall not murder with the verbal. Well, then the question is, the so what? So the reality is, for most of us, we will not, most of us, faith death. by a barrel of a gun or death on a doctor's table as what we will by the words of each other, by the killing of the spirit within ourselves by somebody else, or we kill somebody else's spirit. So what are we called to do? What are we called to do within our life? Well, it moves us to a little bit farther in Matthew chapter 5. Jesus says, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I mean, isn't that the easy thing to do, right? We love those who love us and we hate those who hate us. Yet Jesus says, I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Some people thought I was crazy back years ago when I was praying for Saddam Hussein, that he would have a conversion experience. Some people that I know well said, what are you doing that for, Pastor? Don't you want to see him face judgment? I said, no. I want to see him change his life. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons and daughters of your Father in heaven. If you love those who love you, what reward will you receive? Even the tax collectors. Even the tax collectors do that. And you got to understand that the tax collectors in the Hebrew day, they were Jewish individuals who were working for the Roman government, who would extort money out of their fellow Jews, become rich themselves, give the money to Rome, keep the rest of the money, but they were hated by the Jewish people. So Jesus says, even the tax collectors, hey, they love the other tax collectors. What good is that? And if you greet only your brothers, your sisters, what are you doing more than others? Even the pagans do that. So the reality here is, thou shalt not murder. Premeditated murder. Manslaughter, euthanasia, suicide, abortion. And yet, it does, as I say, it goes deeper than that. How are you and I going to talk to each other when we walk out of the sanctuary? How are we going to share with one another? How are you going to get to work tomorrow if you work and you have that coworker who is just a real pain in the... And everybody knows it, and you all stand around the water cooler and you all talk about it? I have somebody at the Air Guard. Not you, Ed. He's with me in the Air Guard. I have somebody at the Air Guard who's up at Lansing that we're, as chaplains, we're going back and forth, and I can't tell you how often the last 2 or 3 months I've said to my other chaplain there and the executive officer, you know, Bob, I'm teaching on this whole 10 Commandments of you shall not bear false witness. And he keeps saying, yeah, but chaplain, we're being honest. Saying, no, it's probably, you know, I struggle with it too. But the reality is, what do we say to each other when we leave? Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. I know, it's the one day. Some of you ladies are dressed in red. I notice no men are dressed in red. I guess we men don't think about that. The ladies do, you know. It's Valentine's Day, a day that's sort of set aside for we men to buy our significant other female some presents. But is it just one day? No. What Jesus here says is love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. So, I want to encourage you, but I don't want you to think that this is all really funky. I want to encourage you when you walk out today to talk to somebody new. If you have somebody that maybe you've had some struggle with, go up to them. That's why I say it's a little funky, because if you all go talk to somebody different, you're all going to think that you all have issues with one another. Not that. I'm not saying that. But if you follow what I'm saying, when we have those issues with each other, when we speak those harsh words, and I'm already doing the don't bear false witness against each other. When we do that, we are killing each other's spirit. We are killing each other who we are as created in God's image. We're called to love. You and I are called to celebrate life. To celebrate life and to celebrate all of the differences that we have in life. To celebrate our birthdays, to celebrate the anniversaries, to celebrate Sunday morning worship service. To celebrate the fact, as Mark said, it's sort of sunny out and a little bit warm today. So we celebrate that. Every day that we have is called